technology that is built for your every sense. Acer Pure from Acer.
It's an early Diwali Bonanza for India as the Modi government announced the new GST structure that will have a big impact on your wallets. As announced by Prime Minister Narendra Modi from the ramparts of Red Fort on the 15th of August, the next generation GST reforms are here. One that they say will improve the ease of living in India. The Goods and Services Tax Council during its 56th meeting decided to revamp the tax structure into a primarily two-rate system as proposed by the centre. The decisions would come into effect from the 22nd of September for most items. Apart from the two rates of 5% and 18%, the new GST system would also include a 40% special rate on sin goods such as tobacco and luxury items such as large cars, yachts and helicopters. Government retains 5% and 18% slabs. Reforms carried out with focus on common man. Almost all personal use items will see rate cuts as the government looks to boost domestic spending and cushion the economic blow of the US tariffs.
Of GST from 5% to nil, 5 से 0 में जाने वाले आइटम्स इंडिकेट कर रहा हूं. अल्ट्रा हाई टेम्परेचर मिल्क, द UHT मिल्क, छेना और पनीर, all the Indian breads will see nil rate. So roti किसी के ऊपर भी, chapati or roti or paratha or whatever it is, they all come to nil. Reduction from 18 or from 12 to 5%. I list out those items, all of whom have come to 5% from either 18 or from 12. Common man items such as hair oil, toilet soap, bars, shampoos, toothbrushes, toothpaste, bicycles, tableware, kitchenware and other household articles have all come to 5. Whether they were in 18 or whether they were in 12. इसमें food items बहुत सारे हैं. नमकीन से भुजिया है, sauces से पास्ता है, instant noodles है, chocolates, coffee, preserved meat, cornflakes, butter, ghee, ये सब 5% में आ रही है.
Take a look at what's getting cheaper. In the daily essentials category, you have hair oil, soaps, shampoo, toothbrush, shaving creams and bicycles that were earlier in 18% category will now fall in the 5% bracket. Apart from that, utensils, sewing machines, feeding bottles for babies, napkins for babies and clinical diapers were earlier in the 12% category. They will also fall in the 5% bracket. Let's talk about food products. So butter, ghee, cheese, dairy spreads, namkeen, sauce, pasta, cornflakes earlier in 12%, now in 5% category. Ultra high temperature milk, chena, paneer, pizza, bread and khakra. These were earlier in 5% category and now the GST on them is nil. There's no GST on them. Let's talk about healthcare sector. 33 life-saving drugs and medicines earlier in 12% category, now nil. So no GST on this. Life and health insurance also exempted from GST. It was earlier in the 18% bracket. Let's talk about electronic goods. Air conditioners, dishwasher, television sets above 32 inches were earlier in the 28% bracket. They are now in the 18% category. Let's also talk about education items, stationery, maps, wall maps, sharpeners, pencils, pastels, erasers, notebooks were earlier in the 12% category and now they are exempted from GST, no GST on them. In the automobile sector, you have small cars, motorcycles below 350cc, three-wheelers, petrol cars under 1200cc, diesel cars under 1500cc, buses, trucks, ambulances that were earlier in 28% category and now they have been placed in the 18% category. But there's a lot of politics happening on this issue. Now, AIMIM Chief Asduddin Owaisi has hit out at the centre over the GST reforms. He says the states are going to suffer.
अच्छा, सर्विसेज सेक्टर में आप 18 से 5% किए, मगर कोरियर आज भी 18% है. अब कोरियर तो आम आदमी इस्तेमाल करता है ना, तो उसको आप 5% में क्यों नहीं लेके आए? एसेंशियल सर्विसेज हैं और दूसरा एजुकेशन को आपने कम किया. मगर ये बताइए, जो सर्विस प्रोवाइड एजुकेशन में, मिसाल के तौर पे एग्जाम्पल में, अगर कोई बस सर्विस दे रहा है लिख जाने के लिए, उसको आप 18% ला रहे हैं. फिजिकल एजुकेशन है, जो कंपनी एक फिजिकल एजुकेशन बनाकर एजुकेशन इंस्टीट्यूट हो जाती, उसको 18% लगा रहे हैं आप। फिर ये सब चीजें हैं जिससे हमको फिक्र है कि इससे स्टेट्स का और खासतौर से स्टेट्स को बड़ी तकलीफ होने वाली है।
Now, the revised GST regime has been hailed by Nirmala Sitharaman's peers in the cabinet as a bold move that shows Prime Minister Narendra Modi's commitment to the ease of living and ease of doing business. From Union Home Minister Amidst to Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal, all called it a historic decision that will bring huge relief to the poor and middle class while also supporting farmers, MSMEs, women and youth.
In the goods and services tax that were announced yesterday, Prime Minister Narendra Modi always fulfills promises made, and on 15th August he had announced that there is a big Diwali Bonanza in GST, and we have yesterday seen that what we thought could be big has turned out to be the biggest ever reform that India has seen since independence. Sadly, just like Mr. Rahul Gandhi does not understand that the world's fastest growing large economy at 7.8% growth in the first quarter is a matter of delight, joy and celebration, and calls India, Mr. Rahul Gandhi calls India a dead economy, despite being the world's fastest growing large economy. This is the negative thinking of a certain set of people.
Our senior executive editor, Madhadas, spoke with Sanjeev Sanyal, member of PM's Economic Advisory Council. He has highlighted that GST reform has brought a relief for the Aam Aadmi ahead of the festive season.
As the centre has announced rationalisation as far as GST is concerned and of course announced a large number of reforms, what's going to be the impact of all of this? To talk about that, we have with us Sanjeev Sanyal, who's a member of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. Thanks so much for speaking to us here at Times Now, Sanjeev Sanyal. And let me begin by asking you, as the centre has now announced this rationalisation in the indirect tax structure, do you think that this has finally met the long pending demand of the middle class?
Well, you have to remember what we were trying to do back in 2017. When we shifted in 2017 to a new system, the focus was on doing the transition to that new system from what was a completely different, very complicated indirect tax system that existed before. So we were more interested in the transition, and as a result of that, most of the tax rates for different items were basically transitioned from wherever they happened to be in the pre-GST system. We hadn't gone back and looked at it from first principles basis. I mean, it was simply would not have been possible. Since then, the system has stabilized. We have made a lot of changes along the way as well, so it's not like other changes weren't done. But I think the time had come when we, first of all, simplify the system dramatically, so move to this two-slab system. Secondly, we have for the first time also done a more first principles look at why something should be in a particular slab and not another slab. So, for example, certain kinds of food items were at a high level. Cement was at a 28% level. People would keep criticizing that. So all of those have now been put, on a first principle basis, been put into what we think is the more sensible architecture. And yes, of course, the middle class benefits from it, but so do other sections of society.
Right. Now, as you rightly mentioned, there are several essential goods, whether food items, daily use items, even insurance for that matter, which are now under tax relief. How big a boost do you expect in terms of middle class consumption, something that both experts and the government have been anticipating with this announcement?
So I think it's difficult to put a number to it, and modeling these things is almost impossible, and I wouldn't even bother. And in any case, this is not about this quarter or that quarter. This is about really enhancing the underlying efficiency and productivity of the economy. So I think with a simpler system, a more rational system as well, because it's not just about the slabs, it's also there was a lot of inversion in taxes that has now been corrected, particularly for textiles, for example. But there are a lot of process reforms that were also announced. Everybody is obsessed about the tax slabs. But, for example, there was a lot of unhappiness that had grown up around, reintroduction of tax inspector Raj because, the GST registration system had required a lot of scrutiny. Now we have gone through process reform that will make that a lot easier. About 97% of the registrations will now basically happen within 3 days, and even the rest will hopefully get done quite quickly. So the main purpose here is not so much just about the consumption, but the overall efficiency of the system being smoothened out.
Right.
And that's really the aim, and the benefits of that will happen over time. It's not just consumption, but also investment, exports, all these things will benefit.
Okay. Now, there are several opposition-ruled state finance ministers who are now flagging concerns over a potential reduction in revenue. Do you think that this is an issue that could have an impact, particularly in wake of tariff impositions?
So first of all, let me be clear that, while there may be these concerns, the passage of this was done unanimously, which included these finance ministers of these states. Obviously, if you lower taxes, then there will be, at least in the first instance, some impact in revenue. However, the idea, presumably, is that this is good for the economy, which is why presumably they also signed up for it, and that this will create buoyancy from the economy growing faster, not just, as I said, not just the consumption, but the overall efficiency of the economy, allow the economy to grow faster, and that will feed back to revenues.
Right. Now, as I was talking about the tariffs that have been imposed by President Trump, India had already registered 7.8% growth before they came into effect. Once the tariff impact is factored in, how do you see the outlook for the future? And also, of course, these reforms will also have some amount of impact as far as growth is concerned. How are you looking at all of this factored in together?
So you're absolutely right. In the first quarter of this financial year, the economy grew by 7.8% year on year. This is a very strong number, certainly stronger than even I expected. Now, the question here is, what will happen as a net result of one side? You have the tariffs, and the other side you have, GST and other reforms. Let me say that while it's very difficult to work out these in hard numbers, the longer-term impact really is of the GST. I mean, in the end, presumably we will eventually work out some sort of an arrangement with the US, one way or the other. So eventually, I think the GST and investing in our own capabilities and our own economy in terms of efficiency, investment in hard infrastructure, all of these things are far more important in the longer run than, short-term frictions you may have with your trading partners over tariffs.
Right. And now we've seen how the GST Council has also eased taxes on freight services and introduced faster export refund claims, particularly in light of, the tariff impact on the exporters. Do you think that these measures might benefit Indian exporters and those in the logistics sector to some extent, at least, to mitigate the kind of pain that they might have in either the short or the medium term?
So let me say, first of all, that when we are going through these kinds of negotiations and you are seeing geopolitical shifts, we as a rising power should learn that we will occasionally have to stand our ground, even if it takes a little bit of, causes a little bit of turbulence and maybe even a little pressure on us. We have to learn to stand our ground, and which is exactly what we have done. Now, we have not escalated this problem, but we have stood our ground. And if we have to support our export sector as a result of turbulence we may have with our trading partners as a result of this, so be it. We have the resources, not just for on the export front, but even internally, we can support demand. If your economy is growing at 7.8%, then, the domestic economy itself provides a huge amount of cushion to the exporters. And of course, we have the resources on the fiscal side, even on the monetary side, to support those who might be impacted by any such short-term turbulence.
Yeah, so India is much better placed than you're saying than many other countries which are hugely dependent on exports for their economy to function effectively. Isn't that the case?
Well, we are not a closed economy. Our export sector matters to us as well. But let me say we are primarily become a services exporter, as you know. We export far more services now than we do of goods. But of course, goods are important. And in those segments, of course, where the pain will be for them, it will be important in those segments or in those regions. And so we have to be prepared where necessary to provide them with support. The question is, do we have the resources to do it? And the answer is yes, we do. Inflation is very, very low, as you know. In fact, these GST changes will actually lower inflation even further. But let me also say we happen to also have lots of macroeconomic space consequently to use monetary or fiscal measures to provide demand support if necessary.
Right. Sanjeev, Sanyal, thank you so much for taking the time out and speaking to us here at Times Now.